You've been told your whole life that being nice is a virtue, that being agreeable, pleasing, quiet, and accommodating is the way to win people's approval, and maybe, if you're lucky, their respect. But let me tell you something that might sting a little. Being nice is the fastest way to get overlooked, undervalued, and underestimated. Being nice is something society has conditioned many women to value above all else. From the time you were a little girl, you were praised for being quiet, sweet, polite, and cooperative. You were taught that if you smiled enough, said yes enough, and stayed out of the way, people would like you. But what you weren't told is that while being nice might win temporary approval, it rarely commands lasting respect. And without respect, influence becomes a constant struggle. Niceness, in the way it's been pushed onto women, often becomes a form of self-betrayal. It's the silence you hold when you should speak up. It's the agreement you give when your soul is screaming no. It's the tension in your body when you're overcommitting to things you resent just to maintain the peace. Being nice has, for too many women, become a strategy of survival, not one of empowerment. Power, on the other hand, requires a different kind of presence. Power isn't about being loud or forceful, but it is about being clear. Clear about who you are, what you value, what you stand for, and what you will not tolerate. Power means being anchored in your identity, not easily swayed by opinions or expectations, and unlike niceness, power does not shrink to make others feel comfortable. There's a reason why powerful women are often labeled as intimidating or too much. It's because they've refused to conform to the mold of being nice at the expense of being real. A powerful woman is not overly concerned with being liked. She's focused on being effective. She's not reckless, but she is resolute. She doesn't second guess her voice because she understands that her voice was given to her to shift things. Nice girls often end up exhausted. Why? Because they live in a constant state of emotional negotiation, trying to figure out how to do everything for everyone else without ever asking what they truly want. They spend so much energy suppressing their own needs that they forget they're allowed to have them in the first place. The mask of niceness becomes a prison, one that disconnects them from their truth. There's a deep fear embedded in niceness, the fear of rejection. The fear that if you stop being agreeable, you'll lose love, opportunities, or connection. But what's the point of being accepted if it means constantly abandoning yourself? What value is there in a seat at the table if you're too afraid to speak while sitting in it? Power doesn't beg for inclusion. It builds the table, owns the room, and speaks with conviction. Nice keeps the peace, but power creates impact. There are rooms that will welcome a nice girl with open arms, but only if she plays by the rules, stays in her lane, and doesn't challenge the status quo. The moment she steps into her voice, asserts her value, or expects more, she risks being labeled as difficult. But that label isn't a curse. It's a sign you're no longer playing small. Too often, nice becomes the cover-up for fear. It's the way we justify indecision, avoid confrontation, and protect our image. But when a woman taps into her power, she no longer needs to explain herself endlessly. She moves with intention. She chooses truth over approval. She honors her time, her gifts, and her energy without guilt. Power doesn't mean being unkind. It means being whole. It means operating from a place of self-awareness and self-respect. When you choose power over niceness, you begin to realign your life with purpose instead of pressure. You stop being available for everything and start being intentional with your yes. You stop diluting your presence just to fit in and start owning your identity without apology. And here's the real difference. Niceness seeks to avoid conflict, while power is willing to stand in it. Not to create drama, but to uphold truth. Power understands that growth requires friction and progress demands disruption. And if you're always trying to be the nice girl, you'll constantly avoid the very moments that are designed to make you evolve. Power and apology are two energies that cannot occupy the same space at the same time. One stands firm, the other backs away. When you're constantly apologizing for who you are, for what you think, for what you want, and for how you move through the world, you're giving away the very authority that's meant to shift your life. Apologizing doesn't just come from the words, I'm sorry. It shows up in hesitation, second-guessing, shrinking, over-explaining, and dimming your brilliance so others won't feel threatened. There's a subtle yet damaging conditioning many women carry, the belief that being powerful automatically makes them a problem. So instead of standing firm in their truth, they soften it. Instead of owning the room, they tiptoe in. Instead of commanding respect, they seek permission. Every sorry uttered when there's nothing to be sorry for chips away at your ability to stand in the fullness of your potential. Every moment of shrinking back communicates that your presence is too much, that your desires are excessive, that your confidence needs a disclaimer. The apologetic mindset is rooted in fear. Fear of being misunderstood, fear of offending, fear of being perceived as arrogant, bossy, or aggressive. So what happens? Women begin to water down their strength. They sand off the edges of their ambition. They trade boldness for likability. And in doing so, they surrender the power that was meant to build empires. Because here's the truth. No one can take your power from you, but you can give it away. Apology by apology, hesitation by hesitation. Power, by contrast, is not about being dominant or loud. It's about being unapologetically aligned. It's about moving through life with clarity about who you are and what you carry. It's not arrogant to know your worth. It's not rude to set a boundary. It's not selfish to want more. And yet, so many women find themselves apologizing for wanting better, dreaming bigger, and expecting excellence, not because they're wrong, but because someone convinced them that their strength was a threat instead of a gift. When you constantly feel the need to apologize, you create an internal conflict between who you really are and who you think people want you to be. You become more focused on not offending others than you are on fulfilling your purpose. You question your intuition. You delay your decisions. You play it safe not because you lack capability, but because you've been taught to associate power with guilt. And guilt will keep you stuck every time. A powerful woman doesn't explain her value, she embodies it. She doesn't wait to be chosen, she chooses herself. And she doesn't apologize for her presence. She understands that her presence is the shift. But that level of power can only be accessed when you stop editing yourself to fit into rooms you've outgrown. You cannot walk in your full authority while constantly minimizing yourself to avoid making others uncomfortable. The moment you start living with intentionality, you will trigger people who are committed to your old version. That discomfort can tempt you to fall back into apology mode, to justify your elevation, to soften your tone, to prove that you're still humble. But humility is not self-erasure. True humility is recognizing that your power is not just for you, it's for the people you're called to impact. And you can't impact anyone by hiding. Power means making bold decisions without second guessing. It means being able to say no and not follow it with a long explanation. It means holding your standards high even when others try to make you feel guilty for having them. Apology is the language of insecurity. Power is the language of alignment. When you know who you are, what you bring, and where you're going, you stop needing to explain every move you make. This isn't about being rude, it's about being real. You can be respectful without apologizing for your strength. You can be compassionate without compromising your truth. You can be kind and still be clear. But you cannot fully access the power within you while constantly trying to manage how others perceive you. That constant emotional labor will drain you, distract you, and eventually derail you from your assignment. Being powerful isn't about perfection, it's about ownership. It's about standing tall in your convictions and understanding that not everyone will agree with your decisions, but that doesn't make them wrong. It's about knowing that your voice matters, your perspective is valid, and your impact is necessary. And as long as you're still apologizing for taking up space, you'll never fully realize how much space you were meant to take. There comes a point in life where you have to recognize that no one is going to hand you your greatness. Too many women are standing at the edge of their destiny, waiting for someone to validate them, approve them, endorse them, or invite them to rise. That kind of waiting game is the enemy of purpose. Greatness is not granted through permission. It's claimed through decision. You were not created to sit quietly in the corner of your calling, hoping the world finally notices you. You were built to stand, to declare, to create, to lead. The world doesn't give out permission slips for dreams. There will never be a moment where the stars align, everyone applauds your ambition, and fear magically disappears. You must decide to move anyway. Waiting for permission is how potential gets buried. It's how ideas get stale. It's how vision fades. Because while you wait, life keeps moving. And so do the people who were bold enough to act without approval. The truth is, every minute you spend asking, am I good enough, is a minute you could be building, learning, growing, and dominating in your lane. You have to realize that most people won't see your vision clearly until it's already manifested. That's not because they're against you. It's because you were given the blueprint, not them. And yet so many people delay action because they're hoping someone else will see what they see, feel what they feel, and get as excited about their purpose as they are. But your calling was customized for you. That means you don't need a cosigner. You don't need universal agreement. You need obedience to what you know deep down you were born to do. This permission-seeking behavior often comes from early conditioning. You may have been taught to be polite, to stay in line, to wait your turn, to follow rules that were never designed with your brilliance in mind. But greatness doesn't follow a linear path. It disrupts patterns, it breaks norms, it challenges the system. So if you're waiting for traditional structures to invite you in, you might be waiting forever. Some doors you'll never be invited to walk through, you'll have to build your own. Greatness requires bold decisions that may look foolish to people who don't carry your vision. That's why you have to be more committed to the calling than you are to people's comfort. If you're constantly checking in with others to make sure your next move is okay, you'll find yourself stuck in the same place year after year while people with half your talent and twice your audacity move forward. Why? Because they understood something critical. Belief in self is not optional. It's the foundation. There are gifts in you that are still unopened because you're waiting for someone else to say you're ready. But readiness is not a status, it's a choice. You decide to be ready. You step into the unfamiliar. You embrace the discomfort. You act on the vision even when your hands are shaking. That's how confidence is built, not through applause, but through execution. Permission might feel safe, but safety rarely leads to legacy. Think about how many ideas, books, businesses, movements, and inventions never saw the light of day because someone was too afraid to move without approval. There is nothing more tragic than a person who lived a safe life at the expense of a significant one. You were not created for comfort. You were created for impact. And impact doesn't come from following the crowd. It comes from deciding to lead, even if no one's clapping yet. It's easy to convince yourself that someone else knows better, someone else has more authority, someone else is more qualified. But greatness doesn't belong to the most educated, the most connected, or the most experienced. It belongs to the most committed. The ones who show up when it's hard, the ones who move when it's unclear, the ones who dare to believe that what's inside them is worth releasing, even if no one else gets it yet. Your time is too valuable to waste trying to fit into boxes that were never meant for you. The moment you stop asking for permission, you begin reclaiming your power. You start walking with a different posture. You speak differently. You show up differently. You move like someone who knows that destiny doesn't respond to politeness. It responds to faith, to boldness, to consistency. And that kind of energy doesn't beg, it builds. The people you admire, the ones who seem to be walking in full confidence and impact, were not always celebrated. Many of them were ignored, laughed at, or even doubted when they began. The difference is they didn't wait for the world to understand them. They went to work anyway. They didn't keep knocking on locked doors. They built new ones. They didn't ask, can I be great? They said, watch me. The nice girl mindset is a silent trap disguised as a virtue. It convinces women that their value is rooted in how agreeable, pleasant, and low mentor they can be. It teaches them to prioritize everyone else's comfort over their own truth. This mindset doesn't demand chains to keep you small. It uses politeness, guilt, and fear of rejection to make sure you never step into your full authority. It whispers, don't be too bold. Don't ask for too much. Don't make anyone uncomfortable. And slowly, without even realizing it, you start editing yourself to fit into spaces you were actually born to lead. When you operate from the nice girl mindset, you become more concerned with how you're perceived than how you're positioned. You play small in meetings. You hesitate to negotiate for what you deserve. You tolerate disrespect because you don't want to be seen as confrontational. You apologize for taking up space, for having emotions, for having a voice. And the saddest part, most of the time, it's not because anyone directly told you to do those things. It's because you've been conditioned to believe that being too much will cost you everything. This mindset thrives on the need for approval. You start to make decisions not based on what's best for you, but on what will keep others happy. You say yes to things you don't want to do. You stay in relationships that drain you. You work jobs that underpay you just to avoid the discomfort of asserting your value. And every time you suppress your own needs for the sake of being nice, a little part of your power slips through your fingers. Not because it's being stolen, but because you're handing it over. The nice girl is taught that her likability is her leverage. That if she's sweet enough, patient enough, flexible enough, she'll eventually be rewarded. But here's the problem. That reward rarely comes. People get used to your silence. They expect your compliance. They rely on your lack of boundaries. And when you finally try to assert yourself, you're met with shock or worse, resistance. Because the moment you stop playing the role, you're no longer convenient. One of the most dangerous parts of this mindset is how invisible it makes you. You could be the most talented person in the room, the most creative thinker, the most loyal worker, but if you're constantly dimming your light to avoid offending others, you will be overlooked because visibility requires boldness. It requires presence. And the nice girl mindset teaches you to do the exact opposite, to blend in, to not make waves, to wait for someone else to notice your worth. This way of thinking also robs you of time. You spend years being the reliable one, the peacemaker, the fixer. You waste energy trying to maintain harmony at the expense of your own emotional well-being. And while you're busy holding everything together for everyone else, your own dreams sit on the back burner, untouched and unexplored. You convince yourself that someday you'll get to them, but someday never comes because niceness never demands space for itself. It also makes confrontation feel like betrayal. Anytime you try to stand up for yourself, you feel guilt. You feel like you're doing something wrong, like you're being ungrateful or unkind. But confrontation is not cruelty. Speaking up is not disrespect. Saying no is not selfish. These are all healthy expressions of self-worth, but the nice girl mindset treats them like threats. It teaches you to feel bad for honoring yourself. In friendships, this mindset leads to one-sided relationships where you're always the giver. You pour into others, listen to their problems, show up when they need you. But when you're the one who